So I've been told that in moments like this, I should take a beat and just kind of take it all in. So bear with me for a second. I actually don't know what's more surreal. The fact that I'm standing here this early in the morning in this room packed with these beautiful, creative minds all here to hear me speak, or the fact that I'm here in the first place. You guys know a little bit about me. I'm an artist. I recently received my PhD. I'm husband to an amazing celebrity vegan chef, Jamila Crawford. I'm dad to Oji and Ngozi, bonus dad to Sigeli and Sahai, and I love karaoke. No, seriously, I really, really love to sing karaoke. Unfortunately for you, I'm not here for my melodious singing voice today, but instead to talk about my work as a visual artist and scholar. I've been blessed to show my work around the world, from New York to Cape Town, Paris to Miami, every place in between. I have had my work featured on television shows like Blackish and Empire. I've edited magazines, curated exhibitions. I've done a number of really amazing things, but what makes this really surreal is it wasn't very long ago that I actually decided to quit being an artist and go get a real job. So picture this. Summer 2011, I'm racing down I-20 West from Augusta on my way back to Atlanta to attend an event for the National Black Arts Festival. This was an event that was honoring the works of iconic Black visual artists. I was asked to present an award to Thornton Dow. And I'm racing back because they offered to pay me $100 to present this award. And even though I hadn't received this $100 yet, this was all the money that I had to my name at that moment and for the foreseeable future. So I couldn't be late. At this point in my career, I had been pretty successful. I was a pretty recognizable brand. I had sold out shows like Art Basel in Miami and Art Basel in Switzerland. I had been featured in countless magazines and newspapers. And on paper, everything looked good, but in reality, it wasn't going very well at all. My divorce a year earlier had left me practically homeless. My design business had shuttered. My galleries couldn't give paintings away. And to top it all off, just days before, all of my computers, hard drives, and equipment were stolen. Things were looking really bad, and it didn't seem like it was going to get much better. So I really kind of needed that $100. Anyway, as I'm driving down the highway, I'm cursing myself out. What were you thinking? What makes you believe that you could actually be an artist? It's time to grow up, time to get a real job, let it go. The ride is over. And I decided, this is what it's going to be. I'm going to, go next day, look for a job. Because after all, I had 2 small children to provide for, and I couldn't even afford to feed them. So as I'm racing and Atlanta starts to come into view, and feeling like an abject failure, on the verge of tears, I started to flash back a little bit. So I'm going to go back in the story a little bit, back to a little 9-year-old boy who decided that he wanted to be an artist, a cartoon animator, as a matter of fact. And for most of my childhood, from middle through high school, I was laser focused on this idea of being the Black Walt Disney. I had created my own characters, I've created my own comic books, I would Xerox them in the library and sell them to my friends at lunch. I was really, really serious. I was going to be a cartoon animator. When it came time to decide what college I was going to go to, I explicitly chose art schools, thinking, if I was going to be a doctor, I'd go to medical school, right? So go to art school. I received a scholarship to the Atlanta College of Art, and as fate would have it, my first day of class, the very first words I heard destabilized everything that I thought I knew. The professor took attendance, walked over to the chalkboard and wrote, "What is art?" I'd never once considered that question before. And I didn't know what to say. People around the room gave various answers and responses, but I couldn't think of what art was. I had no clue. And that question stayed with me for many years. It was like one of those clouds in a cartoon that like follows you around everywhere. And so this cloud stayed with me as I made my first digital animations. It stayed with me as my best friend came and she was like, those cartoons you're drawing are cute and everything, but come with me to this museum. And she literally took me by my hand and began walking me through museums like the High Museum and taking me to gallery openings. And she would point out different things about, the artwork that I was seeing, explaining this painter's style and this painter's style. She gave me books to read and encouraged me to make my first paintings. That cloud stayed with me as I changed my major from animation to painting. It stayed with me as I went over to Spelman College and began to study under my mentor, Dr. Arturo Lindsay. And like my friend Arturo encouraged me and pushed me to think beyond what I thought I knew. He would always say stuff like, there's no such thing as luck. You have to be prepared when your opportunities arise. And that cloud was still with me in my junior year as I sat in my dorm room listening to Goody Mob's first album. You guys know Goody Mob? So I'm sitting in my dorm room, I'm listening to the album, and the song comes on that reaches inside me and just shakes me to my core. The song is called Guess Who? And on this track, all the guys are rapping about the impact that their mother's love had on them. And that was really powerful to me. I'm going to play a little clip if I can. So I'll just stop it right there. But that song was really impactful to me. And it led me to create this body of work that dug into my own personal history, telling the story of the night that my own mother died when I was 4 years old. And this was something that I held inside and kept with me for all of my life. I never talked to anybody about it. I never shared that experience or what happened. In fact, my own 3 siblings and I had never even discussed it amongst each other, even though we were all there at the time. But this led to a body of work that ultimately became my senior thesis exhibition. And standing in the gallery, watching people react to the work led me to understand what I wanted to do and ultimately to answer that question, what is art? It was through that experience that I began to see the power that art could have on people, the way that art could change people. And I decided that I didn't want to make pretty pictures. I wanted to make art that would make a more pretty world, that would change people, that would help people move through their traumas and could really be a benefit. And so I set myself out to do that. But I soon learned that it wouldn't be that easy. So after I graduated from college, I needed a job. And you can't just go be a painter, right? So I lied. I said I knew how to do graphic design. I had never taken a graphic design class in my life. But I'm a fast learner. So I began hanging out in bookstores and places like Tower Records, and I would buy all the coolest magazines, and I would go back and I would study them and study the composition and then try to recreate what it was that I saw in these like ads and stuff like that. And I had this little job working here in Atlanta in this like pre-production place, and it was cool, but I got fired. I ended up a few months later moving to New York, where I landed a job working for this small boutique design agency that actually ended up being really fortuitous because I got to work with like a who's who of up-and-coming rap stars in New York in the late 90s. Like, it was a dream job, But what was really cool about it was I actually had an opportunity to see a different side of the game. I got to meet the person rather than the characters these rappers played on TV. And I thought that was really fascinating. I was like, I wonder what would happen if somebody marketed a visual artist the same way they do a rap artist. Would it have the same impact? Would people respond the same way, et cetera, et cetera? Anyway, after about a year of working at that place in New York, I ended up coming back to Atlanta and starting my own design agency. And I had similar clients to the ones I work with in New York, you know, small rap labels, nightclubs, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. But one of my first clients was then mayoral candidate Shirley Franklin. And I remember when we were working on Shirley's materials, we would always have to put this line that said, paid for by the committee to make Shirley Franklin mayor of Atlanta. And her team were neurotic about that line. Like, it had to be on everything. And in fact, sometimes they will make us put the line and design everything else around that line. But I remember thinking, like, how fascinating that was and thinking, like, you know, I need a committee like this to, like, ride for me. Because mind you, all the time I was doing graphic design, I was still trying to be a painter. I still wanted to be an artist. So I was doing everything I was taught in school. Make a painting, take a slide, put a package together, mail it out to a gallery. I don't know how many packages I sent out, but I can tell you how many phone calls I got. 0. And so I became frustrated. Like, I couldn't understand why people weren't calling me back. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe they can't pronounce my name. So I'll do something that makes my name unforgettable. At the time, 50 Cent was about to drop his first album. I'd never seen anything like this before. You couldn't open a magazine and 50 Cent not be there. He was everywhere. He was on billboards. He was on cereal boxes. He was on church fans. You name it, 50 Cent was there. And I just thought that was amazing, right? So I got my homeboy to take a picture of me in my hardest, toughest 50 Cent pose. And I came up with this slogan, Fahamu Pecou is the shit. And obviously, it was paid for by the committee to make Fahamu Pecou officially the shit. So I began taking this image and wheat pasting these posters all over the city of Atlanta. And I really just wanted to see what would happen. And it was like an instant hit. Like, I'd be, in the grocery store and people would be like, hey, are you that shit guy? Or, some people were concerned. They were like, I saw a sign that said you were shit. Are you in trouble or something? Like, what's going on? So I had to explain it to a few people, but, most people got it. I began making T-shirts and giving them to friends, and then they would come back, and their friends would want T-shirts. I began making stickers, and you name it, like whatever I could do just to kind of build a buzz, like to get the word out. And it was a lot of fun, but it was a big experiment. I even began what I think was the very first social media campaign. To Blake's point of MySpace, I would go through MySpace and Black Planet and find all these really whack photos of people, and not the shit. Fahamu Pecou is the shit. And, again, it was an experiment. I really just wanted to see what would happen. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I learned how to do graphic design by studying magazines. And so I had become like a really avid collector of magazines. I was always at bookstores buying whatever the latest, issues were. And one day on one of my runs, I just, had a stack of magazines in my hand, and I'm looking at the magazines on the newsstand, and I'm seeing all these faces of people. I don't recognize most of them, but they're all on the covers of magazines. And I start thinking, when you see somebody on the cover of a magazine, they must be somebody important. I should be on the cover of a magazine. So I made one up. And I called it Contemporáneo. It's supposed to be this Latin American contemporary art magazine, and I put myself on the cover. But I designed a subscription card that said, if you fill this out, you'll get a free copy of Contemporaneo featuring Fahamu Pecou. And then I went back to the bookstores and I stuffed these cards in magazines all up and down the newsstand. Again, I just wanted to see what would happen. They came back by the hundreds. There are people today who are still pissed off that they didn't get their copy of Contemporaneo. But anyway, one day I'm at my mailbox and I'm, pulling out, there's a stack of the cards in there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this image is kind of cool. This cover is kind of cool. I should paint this. And then I did. And it was like, oh, snap. There it is. Like fireworks went off. There were trumpets. Angels started singing. It's like, this is it, right? So the magazine trope became this really great platform for me to say all the things that I wanted to say, to make all my observations that I wanted to make about the fine art world, about the disparities of black artists in the fine art world, the excessiveness of hip hop culture, all these different conversations really became the magazine became a great way for me to explore this. But to take it even further, I decided to juxtapose my Fahamu Pecou's the shit characters in-your-face bravado and swag on the cover of art magazines, right? To create this tension, to create a really interesting dialogue. And it became a lot of fun. I actually began to mine hip-hop more strategically, playing off of the language of hip-hop, actually even at points, taking lyrics and transforming them into concepts for paintings, like the one on the right, Superficial, for example. I borrowed that title from a line on Kanye West's second album where he says, "Damn, Kanye, it'd be stupid to diss you. Even your superficial raps are super official." And I was like, oh, that's fly. And so I continued to kind of play with this idea of using the magazine and using this character as a way to kind of offer up my critiques about society. And the concept even extended beyond the canvas, right? So for a lot of my openings and events, I would actually hire bodyguards and recruit my friends to be these ridiculous entourages. And we would literally show up at events. At one of my openings in New York, I rented a limo and stuffed 20 people in it. And we pulled up in front of the gallery and people started filing out like a clown car, dressed in all kind of crazy costumes and stuff like that. And I actually found the performances to be really surreal in themselves because I called them anti-performances because I really didn't do anything. It was just showing up, right? But it would be people's reactions to me because because of the presence that I created, they kind of just assume this person is amazing superstar. So people would come up with all kinds of things for me to autograph. Little children would want to take pictures with me like I was a character at Disneyland. It was really weird, but it was fun. And so I continued to kind of play with this idea, using the magazine, using hip-hop culture, and exploring these different concepts. Around 2010, I actually began to kind of shift the focus a little bit and to deal with explicitly and very specifically representations of black masculinity. And so I started doing these paintings and pulling back from the magazine trope so much and really kind of working with the image, right? This was really inspired by some readings that I did around this psychoanalyst named Jacques Lacan, who talked about something called the mirror stage, which basically suggests that a person forms their identity based on external impulses, things outside of them. So your identity is formed not from the inside out, but from the outside in. When you see yourself, when you see your image or what you perceive yourself to be in something else, you begin to kind of take that on, right? And this is really crucial and really critical when it comes to black masculinity because often those representations of black men are very narrow and also very problematic. And so I began to see my work as a way to be an intervention in the kinds of images and language and discourse around black masculinity. So for example, this work from 2010 is a part of a series called Second Childhood, where I literally had my character in all his swag and bravado dressed in children's clothes to kind of make a commentary about the infantilization of black masculinity. In 2011, I had my first exhibition in Paris. It was called Nagus in Paris. And it was inspired by the Kanye and Jay-Z album, Watch the Throne. But specifically, what really was the impetus for this exhibition was that while they were in Paris, Gwyneth Paltrow took a photo with Kanye and Jay-Z and posted it on her Instagram with the caption, "Niggas in Paris, for real." And everybody was up in arms, like, I can't believe Gwyneth Paltrow just said the N-word and da-da-da. And I'm kind of like, that's absurd. That's the name of the song, you know? But I also wanted to kind of talk about, you know, the fact that Jay-Z and Kanye weren't the first brothers to go to Paris and pop bottles, right? Like, and so Niggas in Paris actually began exploring the negritude movement and taking the language and poetry and concepts from negritude and combining it and juxtaposing it with like hip hop lyrics as a way to talk about black culture, black popular culture, African identity and blackness in Europe. In 2014, I had a solo at Mocha GA, is an exhibition called Gravity. And in this particular series, I decided to interrogate black youth culture as opposed to judge it, right? And taking on the fashion trend of sagging, really wanted to understand what made people want to sag their pants like that, right? And I actually discovered this concept of oppositional fashion, and I realized that sagging actually is a kind of resistance, right? It's a demand to be seen in a world that would rather not see you in the first place, right? So conforming into social standards and ideas, pulling up your pants and, you know, doing whatever everybody tells you to do is actually like rendering you invisible. And so sagging is kind of like, nah, it's literally a middle finger. It's offensive because it's supposed to be, right? And in a way, this becomes a kind of resistance to a politics of respectability that is imposed on black bodies. In 2015, I had another show in Paris called I Know Why the Caged Bird Blings, which is an obvious reference to Maya Angelou's poem, but it has a similar idea in that, you know, all of this like show, like flashiness and jewelry and all these things that we see young black people do, it's a kind of innate need to like show beauty and to show value in a world that is often trying to devalue you, right? In 2016, actually my PhD dissertation is an exhibition called Do or Die, Affect, Ritual, Resistance, which is now on view at the Carlos Museum at Emory. Yeah. And I really worked very hard to try to do something different in terms of my scholarship because I didn't want to do all of this work and research and have it, you know, boxed and couched in a language that was inaccessible to the people that are most intimately impacted by my ideas. And so my dissertation is actually the first ever visual dissertation. The artwork itself is the text. And I really wanted to engage with my community and create and present a body of work that was not only accessible but also legible. And so this body of work engages with the legacy of violence and death that impacts black bodies, and particularly responding to all the police shootings of young black and unarmed boys and men. But I didn't want to fixate on the trauma of those images, but rather to kind of dig into our ancestral legacy and history and understanding African ideologies and spirituality and ritual as a way to provide a healing for black bodies, as a way to give us a glimpse of hope and to show us that we are more powerful than the world projects us to be. Following that exhibition, I did another exhibition called Black Matter Lives, which was in New York in 2016. And this body of work continues that idea, but it actually takes and reorients the adage or the mantra, Black Lives Matter, which to me sounds kind of like a plea, like I'm asking you, please see my humanity, right? Black Matter Lives is a declaration. I don't need your permission. I don't need your acceptance. I'm here and I'm beautiful, right? And so this body of work engages with that idea. Again, in Paris, I did an exhibition called Black Magic, which, again, seeks to kind of reorient our understanding of Black ideologies and Black theories and Black themes, and to demystify them, to make them beautiful and valuable, as opposed to the kind of cartoonish ways we've come to think of, like, African ideas and African objects and things like that. And so Black Magic engages with these ideas through work that showcases the beauty of Blackness and the magic of Blackness. So this is a recent work that a recent body of work that I'm working on, but I realize now that you're probably wondering what happened on that road trip, right? So I finally did make it back to Atlanta in time to attend the event. I had the very, very privileged and distinct honor of presenting Thornton Dow with a Lifetime Achievement Award. It was great. I got my $100. And then I went and sat back in the audience to watch the rest of the show. And as I took my seat, the host announced that, the next award that they were about to present was an award that had not been announced. But in fact, it was an award that will be given to the artist that the organization felt would be the next great Black artist, the next person in this lineage of iconic Black visual artists that they had been honoring that night. And so as I'm sitting in my seat, I hear them begin to read the biography of the artist. Born in Brooklyn, New York, to a Panamanian father and American mother. And I turned to Jamila like, that sounds like my bio. And sure enough, they say the Emerging Artist Award, the person that we think will have the greatest impact, in Black art of the next generation, we present this award to Fahamu Pecou. I almost passed out. Like, what? Like, literally this entire day, I was in despair, cursing myself out, destroying everything, that I thought I knew. I just knew it was over. But in this moment, I was told, nah, bruh, it's just beginning. This is the beginning of the journey. And so that's why I say, life itself can be surreal, yet so very real. Thank you.